George reunites with the Coopers in Georgie and Mandy's first marriage BTS, but Sheldon is still missing. George Cooper Sr. stood outside the grand church, his broad shoulders squared, his expression unreadable. The Texas sun bore down on him, and for a moment he let himself take in the sight before him. The Coopers, his family, were all inside, gathered for Georgie and Mandy's first official wedding ceremony. It wasn't just some courthouse formality this time, it was the real deal. The flowers, the guests, the big dress, the vows, everything his son and his soon-to-be daughter-in-law deserved. George took a deep breath. It had been a long road to this moment. A road filled with regrets, mistakes, and missed opportunities. But today, none of that mattered. Today, he was here. As he stepped inside, the hum of soft conversation surrounded him. Familiar voices, laughter, the occasional clink of glasses. It was all the warmth of a home he had lost long ago. He scanned the room, searching for the faces he knew best. Mary was there, looking as poised and composed as ever, though the tiny wrinkles of worry around her eyes never truly faded. Missy stood beside her, grown into a strong, confident young woman, chatting animatedly with Meemaw. Dale was laughing at something Georgie had just said, the older man's deep chuckle mixing with the light-hearted atmosphere. And then there was Georgie, his boy, standing at the altar, adjusting his tie, his nervousness barely concealed under that confident smirk. Mandy stood across from him, radiant in a simple but elegant white gown. Their little daughter, Cease, was in Meemaw's arms, happily babbling away. For the first time in a long time, George felt like he belonged. But then, the absence hit him. There was one chair empty in the front row. A glaring space where Sheldon should have been. Sheldon. The boy genius. The prodigy. The one who had always walked his own path, who had always been different. George had spent years struggling to connect with his youngest son, never quite knowing how to be the father Sheldon needed. And now, even on such an important day, the absence of Sheldon was undeniable. George exhaled slowly and walked toward the front, his presence drawing a few startled glances. No one had expected him to come. After all, they thought he was just a memory, a part of their past that was too painful to revisit. Mary's lips parted slightly, her expression unreadable. Meemaw, ever the tough one, narrowed her eyes but said nothing. Georgie turned, and for a moment, George saw the flicker of emotions in his son's eyes, surprise, hesitation, and then something softer. Relief. "Hey, Dad," Georgie said at last, his voice even, but the emotion was there, just beneath the surface. "Hey, son," George replied. He looked him up and down, taking in the sharp suit, the proud stance, the way Georgie carried himself. "You clean up nice." Georgie smirked. "I try." There was a pause, filled only by the murmuring of the guests and the faint sound of the organist preparing for the ceremony. "I'm proud of you," George finally said. The words felt foreign on his tongue, but he meant them. Every single one. Georgie's smirk faltered, and his throat bobbed as he swallowed. "Thanks, Dad." Mary cleared her throat softly, stepping closer. "George," she said, her voice tentative. "I didn't think—" "I know," he said, meeting her gaze. "I didn't know if I should, but I couldn't stay away." Her eyes softened, and though years of pain lay between them, there was something else there, too. Understanding. Missy walked up next, arms crossed, but a teasing smirk playing at her lips. "Took you long enough?" George chuckled. "Yeah, well, better late than never." As the guests began to settle into their seats, the officiant signaled that the ceremony was about to begin. George hesitated, unsure of where he was supposed to go. Then, Georgie gestured toward an open seat in the front row. A seat meant for family. With a nod, George took his place. The ceremony was beautiful. Georgie and Mandy exchanged vows that were equal parts heartfelt and humorous. Mandy promised to love Georgie, despite his occasional harebrained schemes, and Georgie vowed to always be there for her and cease, no matter what. Laughter and tears mixed freely among the guests, and when they finally sealed it with a kiss, the church erupted in cheers. As the reception got underway, George found himself standing beside Mary, watching their son dance with his new wife. The years had changed them both, but in this moment, they were simply two parents watching their child take a step into a new future. "You think Sheldon would have come if he could?" George asked quietly. Mary sighed, her expression wistful. "Maybe. You know how he is. He's got his own world, his own way of doing things." "Yeah," George murmured. "I just wish." "I know." And that was all that needed to be said. As the night carried on, George laughed, reminisced, and soaked in the warmth of the family he had once lost. He wasn't perfect. He had made mistakes. But tonight, he was here. And sometimes, showing up was enough.